Welcome to Move the Chains with Jonathan Rivers. Here's your host, Jonathan Rivers.
Let there be football. Welcome to Move the Chains. I'm your host, Jonathan Bam Rivers. On the MTC call sheet today, Pittsburgh finally has their guy. Now, I was under the impression, and I still believe this, they were fine if they didn't sign Aaron Rodgers, but we all knew that they wanted him if they could get him, and now they have him. So I'm going to tell you what I think that means and why it means more to Pittsburgh than it does Aaron Rodgers, and why it's more about Pittsburgh than it is about the quarterback. And in second down, of course, we're going to hit social media to answer your questions regarding the NFL. My nonsense narrative, for some reason, when people talk about players, especially quarterbacks, they always go to the physical traits first. And I'm just here to tell you that it's a nonsense narrative that physical traits trump production. And I'm going to give you a lot of great examples that are currently in the NFL today. And last but not least, people always say that this team or that team has a blueprint to beat the champion. Well, you can't have a blueprint if you don't have the bodies. All that and more right here on Move the Chains. But you know what time it is. Let's kick it off with first down. All right, so I think what happens is people have so much respect for a team and an organization that they live in a world that doesn't still exist. And here's what I mean by that. So look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers are one of the most heralded and I think one of the most substantiated, glorified, productive, whatever superlative you want to use about professional sports, Pittsburgh Steelers are that. They've been phenomenal, all right? The amount of Super Bowl rings they've won, nobody has surpassed that. And I think what happens is because they've had such a level of success in the past, specifically in the 70s, in the 80s, even in the 90s, and Mike Tomlin, the most recent Super Bowl winning coach for the Steelers, but that was 2 decades ago. And when we look at the Steelers now and everybody talks about the culture of Pittsburgh is winning Super Bowls, is it still about winning Super Bowls? And this is no knock on the Steelers. My point is the last 20 years have been about the Steelers being a great team in the regular season, making the playoffs consistently, never having a losing record, and not getting far. So I think you have to do your best, even though it's hard for some people because it's been ingrained in their minds about the Steeler organization. They've only had 3 head coaches in the history. They're phenomenal. I respect Pittsburgh to the utmost, especially Mike Tomlin. But stop looking at Pittsburgh through the lenses of 20 years ago and look at them through the lenses now. Now enter Aaron Rodgers, which everybody said their quarterback situation has been ridiculously bad. And I agree with that. The worst thing I think Pittsburgh could have done and Mike Tomlin could have done was be loyal to Ben Roethlisberger, because ever since he retired, a little bit too late in my estimation, they haven't been able to get the quarterback position right. And I just want to show you a graphic of the quarterbacks that Pittsburgh has had since Roethlisberger retired, and then also Aaron Rodgers. If you look at this, Ben Roethlisberger by far has been the best quarterback since 2020 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Russell Wilson, I continue to say, wasn't bad last year, but we understood what Russell Wilson is and what he's going to be moving forward for the rest of his career. And I think that's a good quarterback, but not a great quarterback. And the whole situation is the Pittsburgh Steelers also haven't had that much leadership on the offensive side of the football, because this team has drafted a higher percentage of defensive players in the first round of the NFL draft than any other team in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken, because it's their identity. And I'm not knocking that. So if you look at these records, Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, who they were going to go with again, who's won games. And this is why I said, I'm telling you guys, I don't think they had a problem starting Mason Rudolph, because Mason Rudolph has won games for them, and they have a lot of artillery when it comes to the 2026 NFL draft. But let's go to the stats from Aaron Rodgers that you've seen here. This is a 4-time MVP who has declined. So those statements are not mutually exclusive. They can both be true at the same time, and they are. Like, this man is a first ballot Hall of Famer. So if you think he's not, you're fooling yourselves. But this is the one thing I'll say as we come off the graphic about Aaron Rodgers and about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Do you guys remember when the Atlanta Falcons signed Kirk Cousins? And I said on this very show that Kirk Cousins was both an upgrade to the Falcons and still not the answer to help lead the Falcons to the Super Bowl. Kirk Cousins is now the backup in Atlanta, and we don't know if he'll still be on the team for the duration of the season because Michael Penix Jr. is their starter. That situation doesn't exactly apply here, because I did read some stories where Aaron Rodgers was saying that if the Steelers drafted a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, he wasn't coming. I don't know how true that is, but that's out there. Here's my point about Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers is still a good quarterback, even at 41 years old. Aaron Rodgers can still throw the football. Aaron Rodgers has more football knowledge and acumen than probably 85, 90% of the people in the NFL, and 100% of us who don't play NFL football. The question is, does Aaron Rodgers take Pittsburgh to a level that they haven't been in over 20 years. That could be the divisional round. That could be the AFC Championship game. Pittsburgh will be a team defensively that will be solid. They no longer have Najee Harris because they have Jalen Warren, right? They have DK Metcalf that they got in a trade from the Seattle Seahawks. So they have Pat Freiermuth. It's not as if the Pittsburgh Steelers don't have the arsenal, nor do they have the capability offensively to be a good football team. You have to ask questions about Aaron Rodgers' health, but you also have to ask about the culture. And this is where I wanted to stick, and this is where a lot of people really have taken issue with the Pittsburgh Steelers waiting on Aaron Rodgers, so to speak. And in one regard, people were badgering and bashing the Pittsburgh Steelers because they didn't have the quarterback. They say, you need to go get Aaron Rodgers. So then when they did what they needed to do to go get Aaron Rodgers, even though Aaron Rodgers was on his own timeline, which he always is, people berated the Pittsburgh Steelers for that. If you're Pittsburgh, the one thing you have to do is block out the noise. What I think about Aaron Rodgers, and this is what I'm going to tell you what I think will ring true throughout the duration of the season for this Pittsburgh team, they will be competitive because they're always competitive under Mike Tomlin. They will win some games they're not supposed to win because they always do that under Mike Tomlin. They may lose a couple games where you thought they had the upper hand, or like my director Ernest says, they are in a higher weight class. That's always been what Pittsburgh is, but they're always competitive. So in my estimation, does Aaron Rodgers make them a Super Bowl contender? Not in my estimation as I see it right now. Could I be surprised? Yes. But what they did is exactly what the Atlanta Falcons did. Pittsburgh upgraded at the position, which is what they needed. But the two things they still haven't done is I don't think it's make them a Super Bowl contender, and they haven't answered the quarterback position for the future. So until those situations transpire, I still consider this in the quarterback situation they were. They're more talented at the position, but they haven't yet turned the page, and we don't know what the future is for Pittsburgh, which is why there are so many question marks in my estimation. All right, when we come back from the break, I'll be answering your social media questions. Back when we'll move the chains right after this. And welcome back to Move the Chains. Before we get to social media questions on second down, I want to first, as always, take this opportunity to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for the opportunity to host Move the Chains. It's truly a blessing. Secondly, I want to thank you, the fans, for watching and supporting the show, whether you watch on YouTube and subscribe to the channel, whether you watch it on TikTok or Facebook, whether you watch it right here on the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54. Truly appreciate it. The numbers are showing the growth, and it's greatly appreciated. And last but not least, I definitely want to thank the best production crew in the business, whether it's the social media manager, JJ, Alex, who helps run the YouTube channel, the director, Ernest, the producer, Josiah, our new Move the Chains correspondent, Miss Raya. Everybody has a hand in this show being the top-level show that it is. So I truly appreciate the best production crew in the business. Having said all that, you know what time it is. It's time for second down. All right, I love social media because social media never dies. People never stop talking. But it provides us with an opportunity to discuss things and me answer your questions. So let's get to the first one. All right. Which sophomore quarterback or second-year quarterback will not meet expectations in 2025? This is an easy answer, man. It's Caleb Williams. And see, what you may think you hear me say is that he won't have a productive 2025 or he'll struggle. That's not what I'm saying because that's not what this question is insinuating. This question says, what sophomore quarterback won't meet expectations? And the expectations that Bears fans and media members, nationally, regionally, locally, whatever you want to call them, have for the Bears and Caleb Williams, to me, are through the roof. And I think at times they're unfair. Now, am I saying that Caleb Williams should have the right to struggle? Yeah, he should have the right to grow, and that will come through struggles. And I'm not saying he shouldn't show some improvement from year one to year two. But what I'm saying is people already said that Caleb Williams came into the best situation for a rookie quarterback because this wasn't a roster that had the number one overall pick. The team had it because of the trade they made, but it wasn't a number one overall pick type roster. They were better than that. And then they've added more bodies, especially on the offensive and defensive lines, right? When you're talking about what they've done transitioning from one head coach to the next and all of those type things. But what I'm telling you is the expectations for the Bears need to be curbed a little bit because you're looking about transition. My director, Ernest, made a great point. It's about weight classes in the NFL. How often can the Chicago Bears play in their weight class against teams that may be better than them? Because there will be teams that are better. There will be teams that are better constructed from top to bottom. There will be teams that are better coached. But that's why they went out and got Ben Johnson. So I think the competitive nature and the culture of the Bears matters. If they don't make the playoffs in 2025, I won't see it necessarily as a failure. I know they wouldn't have reached the goal that they want to reach. But this division is tough. You've got a brand new head coach. But I think the Bears will be better than people expect. But I don't think he'll meet expectations because people have set them too high in my estimation. All right, what's my next question? What holdout can hurt their team the most? We've talked about Trey Hendrickson, Parsons is out there. Guys, Terry McLaurin for the Washington Commanders may be the most important holdout in the NFL right now, because if you look at what the Commanders were doing before Jaden Daniels got there, they weren't doing well at all. But Terry McLaurin was fired. He was catching footballs from people whom you don't even know who they are anymore. They may not even be in the league anymore. And think about this. If you're watching a basketball game, specifically in the NBA or NCAA, sometimes what's the best play to call? ISO. Give the ball to your best player and move out the way. Don't you think that a quarterback loves the opportunity to have an ISO receiver, right? Somebody like a Terry McLaurin, somebody like a Jamar Chase, somebody like a DK Metcalf or a Justin Jefferson. Regardless of the situation, regardless of whether there's double coverage or not, I know I can go get that guy the ball and he'll make a play for me. That's what Terry McLaurin has done for the Commanders, and that's what he did for Jaden Daniels in Jaden Daniels' rookie season. So if you want your sophomore quarterback to continue to take that next step, which I think he will because he's phenomenal physically, mentally, and emotionally as a leader, you need a guy like Terry McLaurin on the field with him at all times because it gives him that peace of mind. Terry McLaurin may be the biggest holdout in the NFL if he doesn't get signed with the Commanders at some time. All right, what's my last question here? What NFL coach has the highest approval rating? To me, this is a no-brainer well, and it's Andy Reid. And I know that the Chiefs just got pummeled, thrashed. They got handled by the Philadelphia Eagles because the Eagles were the best team in football last year. No bones about it. But nobody does more with more, and nobody does more with less in the NFL than Andy Reid. The way that this team has consistently been able to change its stripes, change its identity, be chameleon-like, and still not take a step back is phenomenal. And it's not just Andy Reid. It's Brett Veach in the head office, right? It's the Hunt family who run the organization. It's the players like Patrick Mahomes and Nick Bolton and Chris Jones and all those guys. This is a collective organization, not just team. And because of that, Andy Reid, in my estimation, by far has the highest approval rating of any head coach, and I don't think it's slowing down anytime soon. All right, when we come back from the break, people always look at physical traits and talent first. And that's a lot of times why they miss on hidden gems in the NFL. My favorite segment of the show, Nonsense Narrative, when we come back. Back on Move the Chains, right after this. And welcome back to Move the Chains. So as we get into my favorite segment in just a second, I really just want you to sit back and think about why teams are as good as they are. Teams are as good as they are because they understand what needs to be done. They understand the level at which it needs to be accomplished, but they have a plan. And so many teams don't have a plan. And when you don't have a plan, you resort to not just cliche thinking, but you resort to groupthink. You resort to what everybody else is doing because you think being a part of the majority makes you right, and it doesn't, which is why it's time for my favorite segment of the show so I can bust this open. It's time for my nonsense narrative. All right, so not having a plan. What does not having a plan do for an NFL team? Like I said, it makes you resort to low-hanging fruit. And the easiest low-hanging fruit in the NFL is simply saying that physical talent is all that matters. This is why you hear in any professional sport, right, when we're talking about trades or even transfers in college football now. When a team trades for a player, all-pro player, Pro Bowl player, any type of player that is of some significant talent, they'll say, oh, this team is automatically a conference contender, they're a contender to win their division, they're a contender to win the Super Bowl because of that one move. Now, I'm not saying that's not always true. It may be true some of the time, but to simply think that because you acquire one player or even two players makes you a contender, to me, is short-sighted. And this is because one of the biggest narratives that are nonsense by estimation is that physical talent trumps production, or physical talent trumps intangibles, or physical talent trumps leadership, or physical talent trumps hard work. And this is what I'm telling everybody. Because physically, you can be better than somebody 50, 60, 70% of the time. But the irony is the people who have the intangibles that you can't quite see continue to work and put themselves in position to be successful. And I want to take a guy like Justin Herbert. Listen, I don't have a dislike for a Justin Herbert. I don't have dislike for Trevor Lawrence, and I don't have dislike for Kyler Murray, because these are the three quarterbacks that I want to highlight right here. But you can't argue with the physical gifts of either of those quarterbacks. Even Kyler Murray. Remember, Kyler Murray went number one overall. Now, he may be undersized in terms of his height, but Kyler Murray is very strong, he's very bulky, and he's ridiculously fast. But what's been the biggest issue for Kyler Murray a lot of times? People have said what? It's the intangibles. It's the study time. It's him putting in the work. And honestly, Kyler Murray's had a good NFL career, but he's been injured. And everybody knows that the best ability you can have is availability. Justin Herbert, there is no physical trait that Justin Herbert lacks. He's got a phenomenal arm. He's got great speed. He can move in the pocket. He's tough because he's been hit harder than I see Justin Herbert sometimes get hit like Andrew Luck got hit. And he rarely misses football games. But you can see in the biggest moments, Justin Herbert doesn't come through. They made it to the playoffs last year under Jim Harbaugh in his first season as head coach. They got manhandled by the Texans, like I said they would on this show. And I'm not saying Justin Herbert is a bad quarterback. I'm simply saying that physical production are two different things. Physical traits and physical production don't matter. You have kinetic energy, you have potential energy. You have to, at some point, produce, which is why these conversations happen with these quarterbacks all the time, especially Trevor Lawrence. The reason you're willing to give people the benefit of the doubt so much is because they have physical traits. And in your mind, man, somebody that physically gifted, somebody that fast, somebody that phenomenal has to win, and that's not the truth. This is why quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts still don't get the credit that they deserve, because people will say, well, such and such is still a better quarterback. Jalen Hurts just has everything around him. Well, let me ask you a question. If the roster construction for a team like the Philadelphia Eagles is so great, does that not include the quarterback? I'm going to let you sit on that while we go to break. Hey, when we come back, it'll be the final segment of the show. Back when we move the chains, right after this. And we'll go back to the show. And now it's time for the final segment of the show, which means it's time for the final drive. Like, no shade, man, but I really laugh at people when they say, well, this team has shown the NFL the blueprint to beat the Chiefs or to beat the Ravens or to beat the Bills. Man, do you know why a minimum number of teams have a blueprint? Because they don't have the players. Like, you got to have ballers to have the blueprint. Like, it sounds great, and you can say on paper this team can beat anybody, but that's why on paper anybody can beat anybody, because you got to go play the game. So the next time you hear somebody say this team has the blueprint, I want you to ask yourself, does the blueprint involve the correct players? Because if it doesn't, the blueprint doesn't exist. All right, don't forget, you can not only watch Move the Change right here on the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54, but you can also catch us on YouTube, man. Make sure you subscribe to the channel that's right there on the screen. It's youtube.com/@move_the_change. Make sure you like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, because we're here for it. Hey, another banger. You know how we do things here on Move the Change. For the best production crew in the business, I'm your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers. And always remember, build every day of your life brick by brick. And until next time right here on Move the Chains, God bless.